David and Jerry Zucker and I spent 20 years figuring parody out.
I decided to imagine that I was a composer who was getting a first chance to do something really big and serious.
The theme from Young Frankenstein, I didn't write it as a joke. I wrote it as a pretty lullaby.
Come here, come here, come here.
I do think the best comedies do have an element of emotion and an element of pathos.
Music is the foster parent of a film, and that's why you've got to be very careful about who you give your baby to raise for that period.
Jazz has, rightly or wrongly, always had an association with comedy.
It's composer's dream to have a theme out of a movie which was originally meant to be a little piece of score and to launch a worldwide instrumental hit with it.
It's in the same way that you play comedy, you don't play comedy, you just go and it's incredibly real, and hopefully because of the incidents or the characters, those things turn out to be funny.
With the best comedy, the thing is serious. You're telling a story, and it just happens to be funny rather than tragic.
Comedy scores have always been, I think, difficult for composers. It's much harder, I think, to score a comedy today. The director and the need to talk about what approach works. Whether it's take a straight approach and just let the comedy on screen speak for itself, and that happens a lot, or whether you should lighten it a bit, as Henry Mancini did with the Pink Panther pictures.
Film comedy has certainly become more sophisticated. Silent comedy films had to rely exclusively on the action for their humor, and the role of the musical accompanists was to anticipate and underscore the visual punchlines.
Well, the term Mickey Mousing refers to the technique of accompanying every single little action with an appropriate musical response. For instance, if somebody goes up the stairs, the music would go da 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 da, or if someone goes down the stairs, da 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 da. That was actually more indicative of the Warner Brothers cartoons. For some reason, they called it Mickey Mousing.
That approach is largely discarded today because I think we've achieved a greater sense of sophistication about not only what we're seeing, but what we're hearing.
The Silent Movie Theater in Los Angeles has continued to present silent movies for over 70 years, and a new generation of fans is now being attracted by the immediacy and sense of fun that live musical accompaniment brings.
I get immediate results in a comedy when I can play something that will elicit some laughter from the audience in connection with the film, and to hear a whole room full of people just burst in spontaneous laughter is a great feeling. I try to match some of the more significant hits, as it were. I don't go all the way and do the full-out Mickey Mousing, but if there is someone that takes a fall and it's especially good for comic effect, then I will do that. There'd always been music accompanying films, whether it be from a local pianist. I eventually got a little more elaborate with theater organs. At the beginning, the pianists would improvise their own scores. A lot of the film companies would commission composers to actually compose full scores for their films, and the resident orchestra would go ahead and play that score.
Sheffield, the beating heart of Britain's industrial north.
Nowadays, humor in movies is frequently more sophisticated than straightforward slapstick, and sometimes exists in the context of gritty realism. The Full Monty is set in the once thriving steel town of Sheffield and concerns a group of redundant steel workers who plan to make some money by performing as male strippers. The challenge for the composer was to find a tone for the score which would create a sense of cohesion for the pathos and humor of the drama.
Okay, Full Monty, unemployed blokes in Sheffield, what's the right feel, you know? So you think, well, it could be kind of bluesy kind of, we thought, sort of Billy Braggy kind of industrial music, and then you think steel bands. I mean, you start to go mad, you know, just looking for all the songs, because the film basically is about men and what it is to be a man, you know, so it's like, they're all men songs, you know, It's Raining Men, or I'm a Man, and it's like, no, you know. And in the end, you've got to go for the feel, I think, you know, something that feels right, and so when Anne came along, we just talked about the general tone of the film.
My agent described it to me as a low-budget British comedy about 6 unemployed steel workers who form a sort of Chippendale male stripper group to make a living. And I said, it sounds dreadful. You really expect me to traipse into London on a Saturday morning and see this? So I did. And I'm very glad I did, actually, because after about 10 minutes into the film, I was completely hooked, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Don't get Benny on.
It's a constant battle with trying to make... You try and make the characters sympathetic, and you try and highlight the emotion, but you don't want to go too far. You have to keep a balance.
We were like, we just need the film to have, like, the music's another character, almost. And we were trying spinning different things in, and one scene had this Scar track on it, this Scatolites thing that sat very well on the pictures, and I think it's because and another scene had this bit of madness on it, which again worked very well, because it's kind of a group of guys, and we sort of had looked at the CD cover of the Madness Greatest Hits, and it had this kind of row of blokes. And it's like, this could be it. It's sort of Scar, it's blokey, it's kind of proletarian, it's kind of rough and ready. It's like the movie. So we went back to Anne with the kind of thought of Scar, and she seemed to be coming along from the same angle as well.
This is what it sounds like on the piano. It sounds quite odd on the piano, because it sounds rather sort of sophisticated, but we instrumented it for harmonica and guitar and baritone sax, and it sounded a bit better.
Up, but when the emotion hits in the scene, or the laugh hits in the scene, then whack in that little da-da-da-da-da-da, and it makes the whole thing kind of homogenise and kind of really come together. So we put this kind of acoustic-y Scar kind of band together, and I remember I said the harmonica, because I thought that's cheap. Again, it's kind of, anyone can pick up a harmonica in the way that these guys can just decide they're going to be strippers.
Well, this particular scene, I do remember very clearly when I first saw the film. By the time we got to this scene, I was completely hooked on the film, and I loved this scene. And I thought, well, whoever wrote this is a very fine writer, and, you know, I want to do this film, I want to score this film. It's a great scene.
The scene begins where Gary and Dave save the life of a young man trying to kill himself with his car exhaust fumes, and continues with the 3 of them morbidly musing on effective ways to commit suicide.
You all right, kid? You bastard!
There's a very touching moment where the sort of loser says, well, you know, I haven't got any mates. And the other 2 say, well, we've just saved your life. And you're saying we're not your mates. And he says, oh, cheers.
Don't tell us we're not your mates, all right?
And so that moment really needed some sort of musical pointing out.
I'd run you down as soon as I look at you. Oh, cheers.
So the music is quite sort of mellow.
Thanks a lot.
But at that moment, the main theme comes in. And it all sort of gets all sort of warm and wonderful, or it's supposed to.
The scene was in the script when I read it, and it was very early on in the film, and I just thought, I love this film, you know, because it's just, again, and it's sort of the film. It's ironic, it's funny, it's touching, it's kind of gentle, but it's not too coy.
I've always felt with the comedy that if you can find the right rhythm for it, then you're there. And I think the reggae rhythm that we devised for the Full Monty was the turning point in getting the music right for it.
I mean, people were literally, at some screenings at film festivals, they were literally dancing, you know, dancing in the aisle.
I was lucky enough to be part of the great success of the Full Monty, and we were invited to the Academy Awards and got the posh frock on and everything. And when they announced my name, I was in a state of shock for ages, actually. My husband just sat next to me and said, I don't believe it. I don't believe it, for the rest of the evening.
Sometimes the humor of a film is carried by a very distinct theme, and this was an important element in creating the good time feel for 80s comedy Beverly Hills Cop. This tale of a streetwise cop from Detroit who becomes embroiled with criminals in Beverly Hills so captured the public imagination that the Axel F theme leapt off the screen and into discotheques around the world to become one of the decade's most memorable anthems.
Axel F, or the entire score of Beverly Hills Cop, if you take it out of the movie, it's a solid-state piece of music which you can play, or at that time you could play in clubs. And that was the secret. Sometimes, of course, you take it out and you say, it's a comedy, you know. But with Beverly Hills Cop, you could not tell it was done like a comedy.
I just remember one of the crowning moments of excitement in my career is being at Mann's Chinese Theater and seeing the opening, and the place was packed, and the energy of that score. And for that time, the originality of it and the pop of it, and just how it gave everything so much energy.
Police! You're all under arrest!
This particular scene needed to be driving, funny, very modern, and somehow very intelligent. Eddie Murphy, Axel Foley, the character Axel Foley in Beverly Hills Cop, is a very sneaky, intelligent guy in this movie. I gave this theme, which made it worldwide, this Axel F theme. So for this banana part, for the theme, I used old FM sounds out of a DX7 synthesizer, actually really stock sounds, you know. And it's assembled out of 3 or 4 parts. There was one part which was this one. That's how it starts. Then another thing stacks to that, which is this and then a third part was stacked onto it, which is and these 3 parts combined became this famous banana part.
I need a couple of bananas. How much are they?
Well, the buffet plate is $12.50. You get peaches, plums, oranges, and bananas.
So this was like, well, our banana theme. And it was created for that very section. We used it throughout the movie later on. But that's what it was created for.
Shh. Go ahead, take those bananas.
I had in mind that it had to sound somehow Caribbean. And marimba phones and steel drums and this kind of stuff is something which, to me, made it Caribbean sounding. My philosophy is always to make things very sparse, not overdraw things, you know. So just very minimalistic and very clear sounds. My first sound idea to Beverly Hills Cop was not using anything which clusters the whole score. It has to be very punctuated, very little, tiny, sneaky, and no orchestra. When you start to get crazy with it, because you have the will of hitting every cut, every scene, every punch, everything. When you get more experienced, you learn that it's even better to jump over the cuts and not just hit every cut. It makes the whole picture extremely nervous. With Beverly Hills Cop, we locked and linked lots of cues exactly to certain moves. at that time, breakdance was a modern dance, you know. So, and all these gestures and these moves, you know, seem to work with a music lock to it. I think that Beverly Hills Cop did affect the movie making and the scoring of the movie scoring. You see, lots of movies have been, the music for lots of new movies, for following movies, had been adapted from Beverly Hills Cop. And then you know you created something. If somebody copies you, you know you had something very special. Something rubbish you won't copy.
Finding a musical theme as a vehicle for the humorous intent of a movie wasn't a new technique. 2 decades earlier, influential composer Henry Mancini composed an inherently humorous theme for Peter Sellers' bumbling detective in The Pink Panther. However, whereas Faltermeyer had used electronic rhythms of the 80s, Mancini's theme was born from the jazz idioms popular in his day.
The note he hit in The Pink Panther, for instance, it was like one of those kinds of things, if you're a composer, you listen to that stuff and say, I wish I had thought of that.
Is that by any chance the picture called The Pink Panther?
One of the things that I really love about Henry Mancini's music is his gift of melody. There are plenty of people who write music, and there are very few, I think, who have a true gift with melody.
He did a sort of put together two different things. One was a kind of mystery, a mystery thing in a funny suit. And it works a treat, of course.
Oh, it's David Niven.
The Pink Panther thing, for example, is very cheeky. But again, it sticks in your mind. You can hear it all the time. The use of the band element, saxophone and so on, in that theme is wonderful and very original.
Rolls them in the aisle, eh?
We must find that woman.
Henry Mancini, I suppose, was my best professional friend. He was a man that everybody will describe as cool, whatever that be. He was cool. He was also very good at his job. He was clever and witty.
Henry Mancini was an enormous talent. He had this facility of writing a great tune that sounded as though you'd known it all your life, but it was new.
I don't think we would have got the sound of the Bond films if John Barry hadn't heard Peter Gunn.
Mancini's style has continued to influence film composers, and when George S. Clinton was writing the retro score for Austin Powers, he did more than just tip his hat to his favorite composer.
When I recorded this music, I asked a music contractor to locate as many of the original Henry Mancini musicians as she could to play on the score for me in those pieces which were the most Mancini-esque. And she was able to locate about 3 or 4, maybe 5 players, piano, flute, bass, and one of the other instruments, a guitar, that had played on a lot of Henry Mancini's music in the original Pink Panther and everything. So that was very exciting for me to be able to actually have those music playing this homage to Henry Mancini.
I mean, you've only got 12 semitones to play with, but he seemed to have this wonderful genius of constructing something that was infinitely memorable and likable too. Then you go to something like Breakfast at Tiffany's, and he creates a song like Moon River. I'd give my eye teeth to have written that song. Wonderful man.
Unlike Mancini and Faltermeyer, Michael Kamen had no need to create an original theme for the film Brazil. By the time he came to work on it, director Terry Gilliam had already decided on the central melody. Kamen's challenge then was to rework the essentially light-humored theme so that its mood could be adapted to encompass the absurdity of this nightmarish black comedy. Set in a 1984-style autocracy, the story follows Jonathan Pryce's character as he tries to escape this humorless world, both in reality and in his imagination.
I actually tried to talk Terry Gilliam out of using the song Brazil. I said, that bar mitzvah tune, you don't need that. There's better things. And he said, no, that's it.
When you're dealing with a score of a movie, you've got to be really careful. And so many filmmakers, directors, just hand it over to the composer and say, okay, go and make it work. And I can't do that. It's like, that's half the film is the soundtrack, especially the music, because it dictates how the audience is responding to any particular moment. And I can't just hand it over, so I do is sit there with Michael on the piano, and this is great fun because he's so brilliant. And we'd have a video there playing a scene. I go, and we go, and I'd be doing this with Michael, grabbing chords and doing it and recording it on a tape recorder. And then we'd play it back and say, ooh, that's pretty good, that's nice, but that bit didn't work. Let's do something simpler. He could translate what I was saying, and he would turn it into, how about F minor in 3/4 time, things like that. And that's how we kind of built up the score.
It is actually a searchingly, scorchingly beautiful song. I just slowed the bloody thing down, made it slower and slower and slower, and got rid of the boom, 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 or made that up as the only thing you heard. Brazil! But the parodies on that leap in the first line of the song are what fueled me for the whole movie score.
I had this image when I was in Port Talbot. And Port Talbot is in a very ugly place. It's covered with black coal dust, and there's this gray, miserable sea. And I just had this image of a guy sitting there with this radio picking up this song of this other world, this other place.
And this, to him, is the last remaining beautiful thing in the universe.
Sam Lowry's attempted escape from this dark world is thwarted, and he's eventually arrested and taken back to the ministry for interrogation and torture.
Basically, at that point in the film, Sam Lowry, the Jonathan Pryce character, is obviously going mad, I think. And everything, his fantasies, his nightmares.
Please, help me.
He's on the run from the demons that are inside him and the world that he perceives outside him. And eventually, he breaks through a wall, a door, a magical door seems to be in his wall, and he ends up in this lorry driven by his dream girl, Jill. They drive off into the happy ending, into the sunset, and the music swells as it does in those kinds of movies, and we think, fantastic, everything has ended well. Ah. You're left in this space with nothing.
He's got away from us, Jack. Afraid you're right, Mr. Helpman.
The idea is that he has escaped them. He's escaped into what most people would say would be madness, but I just think is inside, the construct of it. And it's wonderful, and it's beautiful, it's fabulous, and the song floats us out of this place.
Tomorrow was another day.
So it's using the music in ways to cheat the audience. You're taking them down a road, and you're taking them down the road of the happy ending of movies, as most movies are, and then you just rip it out from underneath them. And musically, it's terrifying when the shriek comes in.
It wasn't ever a point where Terry said, you got to help me here, you make it funny. It was mostly a way of figuring out how to get out of the way of the action, let the actors be funny, let the story be funny. And very often, the best way to make music for a movie is take your hands off the keys, take the horn out of your mouth.
Single themes may work for a relatively straightforward narrative comedy. However, If, as in the case of Nurse Betty, the story itself is very complex, then the challenge for the director is to find a composer who can match that complexity in his scoring. Nurse Betty concerns a young woman's obsession with a hospital-based soap opera, and the score needed to support the contrasting viewpoints of her obsession and the reality of the narrative.
When you would get to the point of working with a composer and working with an editor, you're working very, very closely with the same people most of the time. So the idea that you like the person, you say, yes, I can stand being in an enclosed room without windows with this person for a long time and listen to their opinion. You have to sense that there's something about what you're doing that it appeals to them rather than just, well, this really fits a good slot for me before I go to the Bahamas. That is less appealing, you know, to the idea that someone is going to fit this in than I love what is on the page here, I love what I've seen, and I want to do this.
There are three main strands to the score. There is the theme for Betty herself. Its original incarnation is very lively. It's got marimbas playing this sort of motif underneath, and it's very upbeat. It's very sprightly. The strings are probably playing pizzicato underneath, and so it has a lot of life to it, a lot of buoyancy, a lot of pace to it.
Reason to love will continue.
There is the soap opera theme. She's by a character in a soap opera. But not just obsessed, she thinks he's real and she thinks she's in love with him.
I'm just not ready.
No, he's not ready.
So I wrote a really corny soap opera theme, and then it gradually evolves and flips into a full-on love theme for Betty and this character. And then there's the bad guys, and there's a sort of dark, percussive underscore for them.
We're looking for this young lady.
So essentially there are the three elements.
So music became incredibly important in telling a story that was quite schizophrenic in that it had parallel stories going for most of the picture, and within those stories people were kind of shifting between reality and fantasy.
The scene is when Betty turns up in Los Angeles and first meets the actor playing the man that she believes she's in love with.
What are you waiting for? Talk to him,
She starts talking to him, and the actor thinks that she is another actor simply improvising, trying to get a role in the soap opera.
I've missed you, David.
He starts to play along, imagining that she's just an actress who wants to get on the show.
Which does nothing for her sense of reality whatsoever.
The day I left you, I just drove and drove. I drove all day and all that night. I just kept driving.
And we have the theme from the soap opera, which is also her love theme, playing very sweetly, very sincerely. And then it evolves into her theme, which has a slightly sort of sad but sort of intrinsically sweet and hopeful nature to it.
I lost touch with him after that, but I still owe him.
He never said anything. God, that is unbelievable.
It's funny, it's just what I was thinking.
I know.
And then comes back to being the love theme for the soap opera again, the more that he plays along with her.
I would be honored if you'd join us.
And the whole point is it's all juxtaposed against what the audience knows, which is he's an actor. He's not the person she thinks he is. But there's nothing in the picture to give her any clues that this isn't real.
That was the sort of scene that was the linchpin of the movie, that I knew if we didn't believe that, if we didn't have two actors who in 6 minutes went from not knowing each other to saying, would you like to go to a party with me, the movie would fall apart. And there was the kind of place that I knew music could really aid you. And there were times where he'd say, I think we could put a cue here. There would be 3 seconds or you know, 30 seconds sometimes where you'd think, why would we put music there? And then he'd place music, and he said, let me just show you what I mean. And he would reprise 3 notes, and you'd think, wow, you clever fellow.
While Nurse Betty illustrates the way in which humor can be underlined by the use of light-humored themes, in parody movies, the apparent seriousness of the music is used as a counterpoint for the comedy. Elmer Bernstein, with a career in film composition which now spans over 50 years and has included such seminal scores as The Magnificent Seven and The Great Escape, was well placed to draw on his own experience to compose the serious score for Airplane.
What I do is when I get the film on a cassette, for about a week or so, I try not to think. And just play the cassette once in the morning, once in the afternoon, day after day after day, until, when I say until the film starts to talk to me, the film tells me things.
It's over there for the baggage loader.
Nobody, I guarantee you, ever laughed harder at Airplane than Elmer Bernstein.
You just say Airplane and start to laugh.
He completely got it and completely understood it and completely understood that his music had to ignore entirely the comedy.
Airplane was a particular comedy. Of all the comedies I've done, it had a very special character because it was a send-up comedy. It was a send-up of another film.
You have to decide. Stay in formation. Target's just ahead. Target should be clear.
And one morning we got to work, and there was this movie that we had taped in the middle of the night, inadvertently, called Zero. And it was written by Arthur Haley, the same guy who wrote Airport, and I think Airport 75, and a lot of good disaster books and films. And it starred Linda Darnell and Dana Andrews and Sterling Hayden. It was made in 1957. And it was the story of this former war pilot who had to get on an airplane, and the airplane got in trouble and he had to land it, and it was Airplane. There's actually a line in Zero Hour that we just took as is from 0 Hour and put it in Airplane that said, we have to find someone who not only can fly this plane, but who didn't have fish for dinner. You don't even have to push that to make it a joke.
When I first started doing comedies, I had a conversation with John Landis, who was a great comedy director, and we talked about a score being funnier for a film, for a comedy film, if the approach to it were serious.
We just knew that if he had the right sensibility, you know, after you get together with him, that he clearly could produce a serious, dramatic score, which is really what we were looking for.
209er, taxi to runway 19er.
In the scene where the plane is taking off and people are running about at the side of the plane, how many times have we seen that scene? Used to be with trains many, many years ago. And that was part of I think that's part of the send-up.
Bill? Better get on board, son.
The whole thing of the music was to make it seem really serious, you know, like this was really important, something real was happening.
Bill! Goodbye, darling! Bill! Bill! With me all the time!
I decided to imagine that I was a composer who was getting a first chance to do something really big and serious. And the music is in some ways inappropriate. It's too dramatic, but I think that's where the humor comes from.
Oh my God, the automatic pilot, it's deflating!
I was willing to borrow genres from any. And as a matter of fact, one of the funniest things I did that doesn't quite come off at the end because we didn't have enough time to work on it. There's a big theme at the end that was a love theme kind of thing at the end. And I had this chorus singing along with it, a girl's chorus singing along with it. And I did one of these tricks of raising the key after each phrase, which is a thing they do, you know, when the sun is coming up kind of thing. And what I did is I kept raising the key until they couldn't do it anymore, and they kind of all shriek and fall apart.
Like Airplane, Young Frankenstein is a parody comedy. However, while Elmer Bernstein shamelessly overdramatized the music to accentuate the humor, for Young Frankenstein, John Morris composed a classic Gothic horror score.
Mel asked me, called me on the phone. I talked to him in this room, and he said, write for Young Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein.
The most beautiful, romantic lullaby you can, because it will serve as the monster's childhood, and then when we refer to it in the film, the audience will get it, they'll get it emotionally, and it was absolutely correct.
I know what he likes.
Young Frankenstein, the theme from Young Frankenstein, I didn't write it as a joke. I wrote it as a pretty lullaby.
You played that music in the middle of the night. Yes! To get us into the laboratory.
Yes!
Now it's being performed by symphonies, by violinists. Gil Shahan just recorded it. It has another life because it isn't a spoof. It's just what's proper.
What a filthy job. Could be worse. How? Could be raining.
In the early part of my career, which was pre-1966, I did 27 musical comedies as a dance arranger. So I knew all about catching tricks and writing mood music, and I mean, you learn all that in the theater.
His veins, his feet, his hands, his organs would all have to be increased in size.
Exactly.
He would have an enormous Schwanzstücke.
That goes without saying.
Oof.
Watching the final mix of a picture, the first of all, what is in the back of your mind, that this is forever. Whatever you do in this room is forever. So you better be good. Isn't that thrilling? It's forever, and it is.
In the same way that a good comedian tells his jokes with a straight face, so the music of humorous films frequently maintains a poker face. Monty Python's Life of Brian employs a similarly serious approach, but in addition to parodying the biblical epics of the past, manages to deliver a biting satire on the bigotry of religion and political zealotry.
We started off sort of thinking about doing something on the Bible story, and we started doing some doing research and reading the Gospels again, and quickly came to the conclusion that the humour really, I mean, it wasn't in what Christ was saying, but it was in the way people interpret what Christ says.
He has given us a sign! Oh, he has given us a show!
You have somebody coming along saying a lot of wonderful things and love, and then for 2,000 years afterwards, people are torturing each other and killing each other because they can't agree quite how he said it or what he meant.
I think it was Blessed Are the Cheesemakers.
When we were writing the film, we all went and had and spent a couple of days watching biblical epics, sort of Sodom and Gomorrah and the greatest story ever told, and The Robe and all things like that. And we just looked at a few reels of each one, and after a while, you began to realise they all had one thing in common, and that was that everybody spoke very slowly in biblical days because they were obviously very aware that this was a very important time. And we just thought, just by having people talking normally, in normal voices, that would probably get up a lot of people's noses. And I think a lot of the offence actually comes from that.
He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Now go away.
I said to Terry, "You can," and we had a few tussles because Terry, in some places, wanted to more obviously comic. I would call it Keystone Cops, you know, corny chase music, and I said, no, it'll spoil it. So we had a few tussles about that, and I did rewrite one or two passages, but by and large, I think I sort of, I won the argument about it, and when I see it now, I think I'm glad I did fight for it, because I think it works. When Brian is being chased inevitably by the Romans and gets away, and it's fast, furious music for the whole orchestra. I mean, really over the top. I was playing in a jazz band at that time, and I had a gig that evening, and I had to get it finished by 6 o'clock. And fast music is actually quite hard to write for me, anyway, because you've got an awful lot of notes in a short space of time, and I had to get it done by this deadline, and I think maybe that's what's given its emergency.
I was sort of struck with how good the music is there. It's doing a lot of things without, again, without overemphasising what's going on.
This is actually the orchestral score of Life of Brian, which I haven't looked at for 20-odd years. It's quite interesting to see it. It brings back some happy memories. This is the very first cue, where the choir come in very gently, and then the whole orchestra comes in on this page. You forget how much actual physical work there is in just writing this out. People think they hear the music, they think, well, that's just music, but the actual sheer physical labour, which is much easier these days with the computers, but in those days one had to write it all out literally by hand. There's lots of quotes in this, which looking at it again, I quoted all sorts of other composers, Mozart, Wagner, Monteverdi. No one spotted it, or no one told me, I see where you got that from, which I thought was a shame, because they were supposed to know the references, because they're hopefully humorous.
Are you the Judean People's Front? Judean People's Front? Well, the People's Front of Judea.
I'm not a pianist at all, and in fact, it's so bad it's a joke amongst the directors I work with. But this is sort of the idea. This is the very beginning of the Life of Brian, where the choir starts it off. It's when the shepherds are approaching as it turns out, the wrong stable. This is all choir. Then the choir comes in. I remember when we filmed it, having played that to Terry on the piano, he thought, well, yeah, that sounds nice. But then he came into the recording studio just as we recorded that bit where the choir comes in. He almost fell over backwards, this huge sound which he wasn't expecting.
But basically what he was saying was to try and give it an epic feel, but also to try and give it a kind of not church, but kind of giving it a choral sort of feel to it. So he was using a choir a lot in it, which was quite interesting at the time, I thought.
It was fun to do because it was such a funny film to look at. I mean, when you do a film score, you certainly get, obviously, to know the film very well because you watch it so often. And you get your favourite bits and other bits you don't want to look at and other bits you enjoy every time you watch them. I must say Life of Brian, the whole thing, and I think I knew the script word for word by the end of it.
What have the Romans ever done for us?
I find when I'm given a film to do, I watch it and it takes a while to get into. And I always need to find a sound that's right for the film. And in a way, it's a bit like a colour. You think this film is going to be blue, or it's going to be red, or it's going to be black. And then the music, in a way, is the same. The music has a colour, which obviously vary from extremes, light blue, dark blue. Once you find that sound, I find that everything else comes from it. You'll find a melody and you'll find a harmony, and obviously the instrumentation, which is terribly important.
There was one bit, I shouldn't say this maybe, but there was one bit just towards the end where I felt we weren't quite, the music wasn't quite tense, and we'd been so impressed with the orchestra and everything, and we had never dared to change anything, but I snuck back into the studio and took some of the elements of one. It was only a short section, about 20 seconds, I think. But I slowed the beat, slowed it down, and took out some of the instruments. I had to confess this to Jeffrey in fear and trembling. It was his music, but it wasn't all there, and it was slowed down. But it just seemed to be a little bit more tense there.
Always look on the bright side of life. Oh, David and Jerry Zucker and I spent 20 years together figuring parody out. And as we went along, you know, there were always disagreements along the way as we tried to figure out what might be funny and what might not be funny. And having spent that much time together, we sort of formulated rules that would help us govern what might or might not be funny. Obviously, the 15th rule was the most important rule, which is there are no rules.
The same can be said in scoring for comedy films. There are no rules. What is true is that beneath the various layers of slapstick and pathos, satire and parody, we can frequently find pieces of music which are both unlikely and memorable.
Get ready, because Thursday's
got an extra little something.
And it kicks off with Fireflies.
Steal my own cattle.
We could do it, John. We could. It'd be easy.
Then at 9:30...
If you like movies, music...
You're getting about 6 or 7 species, including the buffle. After clearing, you will get anything up to 70 species will come back. So it's a big jump.
But there's another reason buffle grass has lost its popularity. Buffle burns.
It's a heavy...